Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. I am delighted that you are here with me today, and this is part of our Educators Eden series. And of course, our Educators Eden series is one that is based on, that is designed for, that celebrates the love and joy that educators bring to their programs, students, learners, and the idea that our educators have created literally for themselves, Eden in their own lives, paradise on earth. And that's the whole idea. So we celebrate educators, we share information, tools, techniques, and it's all about those who have chosen, who've selected on their own accord to be in the education field at any level, from the uh, early childhood development all the way through people who work primarily or solely with our adults and adult education programs at any age. So from the smallest of us humans through the most senior of us in terms of age, the idea that we are able to learn new things, that we are able to be part of the process of transferring knowledge is something that is applicable. And educators come in all different types of personalities and interests and backgrounds, but this is where we just celebrate those educators who've determined that they're going to create Eden for themselves in their professional world and, of course, holistically in their entire lives, as we are always focused in all of our programs on how can we surpass our goals and what can we do in terms of being joyful in our lives and our work. So, here we are, and we are focusing on our Educators Eden series, and our specific show topic today is one that is, of course, close to my heart. Our specific show today is teaching college courses online is easy. Not. And so the idea here is that we're discussing whether or not teaching college courses through distributed learning, specifically via internet technology, is easy. Or is it not easy? So I used a bit of slang that was very popular when I was a younger person, where you'd make a statement and then you'd pause and then you'd say not. And it was just a way to convey that what you had previously said isn't accurate necessarily. And so that's what our topic is. Teaching college courses online is easy. Not. So let's explore. There's some statistics in the show notes that kind of begin to help us wrap our head around this whole entire idea of teaching in a different modality where we're using internet-based technology for our educational engagement. And first of all, of course, the thing that's really exciting and fun about the entire question of whether or not teaching online is easy is that it's new. You know, new is all relative, right? I mean, but certainly the internet technology that exists today, that's as ubiquitous as it is today, didn't exist when I was a student. Um, Primary school or secondary school, or in total candor, in undergraduate or in my law school program or in my MBA program. I did go back to school relatively recently, and I graduated in 2013 with another master's degree and a master of science degree, and that I did actually take online and have put together a program from the student perspective online. Specifically from the graduate university student online. So I've been around long enough, thank goodness, to explore education as a student before this technology existed, and then to take advantage of it here recently. And I've also been able to teach university college courses before the internet technology existed as it does today. I started teaching in the 1990s. I believe 1997 was the first year that I taught university courses, and again, didn't have the internet technology we have today, so it wasn't even an option. um, fast forward to today, I am still teaching, and I'm thrilled to be teaching university classes in the same general area that I taught way back when, the intersection of business and law, which is of course my happiest um, and primary focus of what I do. Now we do a lot of business solely focus. We do some law solely focus. We do a lot of integration with shareholders, HR, managers, executives, leadership, and then we do a lot of things that are ancillary and related to our business and overall life success. So I've been in this area for a little bit. Of course, there are people who've been teaching, for 40 or 50 years that certainly have much more expertise. But no matter how long someone's been teaching, the area of teaching online is going to be sort of a leveler, because it doesn't really matter how old somebody is, or how young someone is, relatively speaking. The technology is new, and so this isn't something that somebody's been doing 30 years teaching online, um, to large numbers of university students. It's not been happening. It didn't exist. So that's interesting and exciting. But the flip side of it being interesting and exciting is it's just full of unknowns, right? What's the impact on the student? What's the impact on the faculty member? Is it easy? Is it hard? Should it stay? Should it go? What does it mean? And so part of this, of course, is disruptive beyond just education. I mean, we deal with the internet technology, which of course has been transferred from this sort of old perception that people had of a computer, or did a personal computer, which was stationary, to these incredible machines that it's just unbelievable. I'm literally looking at my smartphone right now, and it's what the smartphone can do compared to what the first personal computers that I used in the 1980s did. It's almost magical. The technology is just, for a lay person like myself who doesn't create hardware or software, just to sort of be an end user, it's really unbelievable. So we're at this point now where when we talk about online, it's not necessarily that's some sort of stationary computer based access. You can access your internet on your mobile devices, and there are other devices I've seen, wearable computers that are coming online. So I don't even know where this is going to be in a few years. But the basic question is, teaching college courses online is easy? Not. I have been, I think, pretty fortunate. I started teaching online, I believe, somewhere around 2003. So it was somewhat toward the earlier permutations of this exciting potential new opportunity. And as the technology has increased, the ubiquity of the internet access has increased, the invention and proliferation of issues like the smartphone and mobile devices has increased, then the whole entire landscape has changed. I mean, what I did in 2003, in terms of teaching quote online, is nowhere near what the technology provides, a classroom to do today, just in terms of software. So I've been doing this for a while, and a little bit more than a decade, and I've done it in a lot of different settings. So I primarily taught just as an adjunct, which is somebody who teaches just on sort of part-time or part-time, around their other work and personal obligations. Because it's great to teach, keeps your skills sharp. It allows you to continually be refreshing your knowledge base. It's also fun for those of us who are in Educators Eden who love teaching. And it also provides an opportunity to continue to develop new skills. Because teaching it's similar in a lot of ways to other things I do, but it's not exactly the same. So if I'm practicing law and I'm in a courtroom, I'm using communication skills, but they're not exactly the same as if I'm a teacher and teaching content to my college students. So I've been doing this for a little while and seen a lot of change. And now, as the time I'm recording this program, I've been very fortunate to be part of a large state public university system in the U.S. And be part of their graduate online programs. And so it's really exciting. But I've also seen small programs. I've seen startup institutions and organizations. I've seen schools that weren't public institutions of education that were in the private for-profit sector. I've seen a lot of different aspects of this over the years. So let's dive in and see, is teaching college courses online easy or not? Ah, it's like anything else in life. I think that, sort of the early adopter who was in this field at the over a decade or so or more, saw a really different perception among students, among administrators, among the public, in terms of this concept. And it's now moved into something that's sort of mainstream. And so along with that journey, the idea of teaching, that you're a teacher, but you're not literally standing in front of a chalkboard or a whiteboard or a student group, in a classroom, and you're in one physical place and your students are in other physical places, and you're just using technology to communicate. It seems normal now because people do that, socially. They do that with their friends and family. They do that. So many workplaces are distributed where the team members are in one place, or the customers or clients are in another place. So it's more accepted. And along with that has become, I think, an idea of what online teaching consists of, that has, I think, been impacted by some, I would argue, misunderstandings. So the first thing that I'm asserting in this program is that teaching college courses online is it's not easy. It's not. And in fact, many would argue, and I'm going to argue, that teaching classes online is actually, quote, harder than teaching traditional classroom classes, where I'm in the room at the same time, synchronous with all of my students, and I'm speaking and writing on a chalkboard, on a whiteboard, on an overhead projector, and I'm sharing that knowledge right there in that room with them right now. That's different from this idea of the current sort of iteration of online courses, which are based on asynchronous learning, the majority, meaning that you've got students, in different time zones. You've got faculty in different time zones, and so you're not necessarily at the exact same time communicating, both sending and receiving information. So let's sort of see, for those who argue that our show topic is accurate, right? Teaching college classes online is easy? Not. And I just made that argument. Why? And I'm claiming it's harder. What makes it harder? I think some of the myths and the stereotypes that are out in sort of the mainstream now would be, oh, well, look, anytime you're not having to get in transportation, whether it's a vehicle, your personal car, a bus, a train, you're not getting on your bicycle or your moped and sort of walking or biking or driving or riding somewhere. You're not dealing with transportation issues. You're sitting somewhere and you're just using internet technology to quote teach. That seems easy, and many people, of course, who do teach using the internet often do it from their home offices, partially because many institutions don't pay. They don't have a budget where they say, okay, faculty member, you're teaching online, and we're going to go ahead and get you a different office so that you can ensure that you're able to control access, and that you have the quiet time necessary to be able to teach without interruption. So many people who even have maybe an office on a physical campus often will do their teaching or a lot of their work in their classes in a private office, often in their own home that they are paying for, and of course in many jurisdictions in the U.S., of course, if that's part of your business and there's other rules that are met, you can often take up, get a tax benefits for utilizing a specifically compliant home office. So the idea, I think, is that somebody thinks, okay, this is going to be easy. I don't have to get up. I don't have to deal with traffic or transportation. I don't have to deal with students who are either disruptive or shouting out or acting out or throwing things, paper airplanes. I don't have to deal with students who are completely disengaged, right? They might be sitting in my lecture hall with me, but they're literally asleep. I can see them sleeping. I can hear them snoring. Um, and it's interesting because I do a lot of on site synchronous adult education programs, and I often do in the beginning of these adult programs. I sort of tell a little story about being a college professor and wanting to make sure that my students were awake, and how I would move really close to them. Even if it was a big section, I had 300 students, I'd go all the way to the furthest reach of the room to make sure that those people heard me really clearly. I get really close to them, and I'd wake them up, because if you're sleeping, you're not learning. And so the idea, I think, of teaching online has so many benefits. It also has many, many drawbacks. And if you're going to explore this idea of teaching online, and you haven't been doing it, I think it's easy sometimes to look at sort of the purported benefits and think, well, that sounds great, right? I could teach, with less, commuting time. I could teach in the peace and quiet of my, home office, and have more control over somebody, interrupting me for, meetings or questions or things of that nature. And it's great, right? The classroom's open 24 hours a day. This whole idea, we're moving away from, I'm going to be in class on, Tuesday and Thursday from 3:30 to 5, and that's when I'm in class teaching. That's the synchronous traditional classroom method, how I started teaching. Um, and this new method is the classroom's open, 24 hours a day. And I've got often students around the country, or around the region, or around the world. I currently have international students. So I've got students in one class. I've got students in the U.S., all over the U.S., different time zones. And I've got students, in Europe, and students in Africa, and students in Asia. And we're all in that same class. So obviously we're not all in there at the same time, often because if it's, middle of the day for some of the students, it's 3 o'clock in the morning for other students, and usually if they're on a traditional work schedule, they're asleep. So the asynchronous idea is great because it does allow it removes these geographic restrictions, right? The same way that the student didn't have to, pack up wherever they lived and go and move to this, the campus, and, get a new place to live, whether it's an on-campus housing, a dorm, or get an apartment, and then spend all that money. They can stay wherever they are. All they need to do is, access their internet, and they can stay, in Alaska, or in Asia, or whatever, and now they're getting access to this great opportunity to be part of these educational programs, with, again, the same idea as the educator, right? I don't have to commute and everything. So what are some of the challenges that I would argue make it much harder in terms of teaching online? One, because the class is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then that means you're going to have students accessing it, and it also means then that students are going to expect, partially because as technology is sped up, just sort of as people, as humans, we expect so much more quick response, because we know, look, I didn't send you a letter in the mail, and I had to wait 5 days to see if you got it. No, I sent you an electronic message. You got it right now. I sent you a text message. I know you have it. I can see it right there. I sent it so that you've received it. So where's my answer? So you've got that sort of cultural across the globe. Everyone just expects everything faster. So it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I'm not going to class on Tuesday and Thursday from 3:30 to 5, presenting my information, and then also having my office hours, whatever, Tuesday, Thursday from, noon to 2, scheduled, right? No, The classroom is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And my students are going to be in there, depending on their schedule with work, depending on where they live in the world, their time zone, depending on their, family responsibilities, their social responsibilities. They're going to do it around their schedule. That's one of the great, ideas, right? Like, it's so convenient. Yeah, it is in many ways. But that also means that the faculty member, instead of just having to be there, from my 3:30 to 5 Tuesday, Thursday lecture, is I'm have to technically find a way to seem to be there almost all the time. Now, obviously, the faculty member also has to sleep and eat and take a shower and take care of their own family and friends and all that kind of stuff. So you're not in there 24 hours, 7 days a week. But the idea that a faculty member is going to think they're going to teach online, and they're going to, oh, okay, I'll go in there Tuesday and Thursday, for my hour and a half, and then I'm done. No, it absolutely is not going to be acceptable. As I said, I've taught at a large variety of organizations in a variety of capacities. Um, as adjuncts, as a full-time faculty member, I've even had opportunities to have some leadership roles with online teaching. So online faculty members were hired, and I've been part of the process, the person who helps train them in their job and teach them how to do it, and also evaluate them and ensure that they're meeting all the expectations. Or if they're not meeting the expectations, at some point, sometimes people aren't able to continue on with their job. And I've also had the opportunity to be in a leadership role within certain areas of study where I was in charge of, at one point I think the numbers were somewhere around, 800 faculty were, active on the roles in that department. And I was, responsible for sharing information with them about the administration, answering the questions about their class. I've also been in a position where I've done assessments and reviews of different online classes. I've done that inside institutions, but I've also done it outside institutions where I've been trained as a peer reviewer from outside organizations that go in all types of different schools and sort of assess the layout, the structure, everything from, can a student quickly find the syllabus? Is it easy to navigate and access the grades? How about the feedback? So there's a lot to this. Part of it is their classroom's open 24 hours, 7 days a week. The other part is for those of us like myself who were not, computer scientists. This isn't my area. I don't write software. I'm not a hardware designer. I'm not an internet professional. You have to learn a lot of this technology to be able to do your job. And the expectation, that my perception is of the expectation, at least as of the moment that I'm making the show, is that I think initially, like I said, in the early 2000s, it was understood that, not everybody's an internet expert. If you knew how to send an email, awesome. But now the expectation is if you don't know it, you better learn it. And the other thing is that the online classroom environments are changing really rapidly. So, initially they were rudimentary. I mean, I taught online initially, and literally it was just exchange emails. The student would email me an assignment, I would email them their feedback. That was it. Then I moved into an online classroom where the student, would email me things, and then I use an Excel spreadsheet, just a standalone, not online Excel software where I'd enter in the grades, and then I just sort of copy and paste that and then email that in, and then use sort of early messaging systems. But there was no sort of virtual class where you logged into this software and you went into like an environment where there's software and multimedia, and there's lectures and online grading, and so all of that though is how I teach now. The technology's improved. It's become more sophisticated. So what that means is if you're going to teach online, one of the reasons it's not easy. In a traditional classroom, you have your knowledge base, right? So if you're an expert on astronomy or a certain area of astronomy, you know that, and all you have to do then is just be ready to go to your classroom at the assigned time. Tuesday, Thursday, 3:35. You lecture, you answer questions, you engage your students in Socratic enlightenment. Then you have office hours, and other than that, your time is yours. You're researching, you're reading, you're doing all that, but you're not on the side having to go learn how to navigate and utilize new software. To build and embed links, for lectures, and how to use the software and design and build a grade book. I mean, you're not having to do this because it's not part of your job. You walk in the room, you have the knowledge, you impart the knowledge, you work with your students, you consult with your students, of course, outside of class, office hours, but you're not sitting somewhere having to also, to a certain level, have a higher level of, internet. It's not just the internet, it's specific types of software. So as I've been teaching all these years, I've learned to use lots of different software. And there's new entries into the online software market, just like any other technology field. And so you have to adapt, learn how to use it, learn how to sort of, to a certain extent, customize it, learn it enough so that you can not just use it for yourself, but you also have to be able to answer students' questions. So this isn't easy, and none of that applies in traditional classroom. So you have your own knowledge base. Let's say you're still in astronomy, but on top of that, you have to learn all this other software customization and things of this nature, which really aren't your area. But if you don't learn it and you're not willing to learn it, at least my lay of the land right now is that there's no more discussion over this, to the best of my understanding, because institutions are changing so rapidly, right? And the numbers are incredible. So in the show notes, I found some data that says, over 7 million students, college students, took online classes. The 2013 numbers. For students who are not in college, the students who are high school students and younger primary, secondary school students, over 1 million students doing kindergarten and grade 12 in the US, taking online classes in about the same time period. So these numbers are huge, and they're just growing. The rates are different in terms of the population and how many of them are online and how many are projected to go online. But what's happened is this: initially, you had like a few schools, and I mean very few, that put a lot of time and energy into these programs, distributed learning. Many of whom had already been specialists in adult education. But as you had these numbers explode, and you're looking at what, somewhere around 8 million and counting of online, formal students in colleges and K through 12, plus all the people who take informal classes online. You've seen almost every large institution move into the space in some way, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, Harvard has online programs through the Harvard Extension. So you can go to the most sort of hallowed names in education to the newest kind of startup school, and everybody's in this online space now. So it's incredibly competitive, which is one of the reasons why the software keeps changing, trying to make it better, trying to give a better experience to your student. I mean, educational institutions are to some level technology providers, and they have to think about the end user and all the things that you would have to with any sort of software firm. And the students are constantly asking, I want to be able to access class and do my work on my mobile phone or my tablet, or my, computer that I wear in my glasses. I mean, it keeps increasing, and it's increasing really quickly. So when we talk about teaching online classes is easy, it's challenging, it's interesting, but you have to have the right personality for it. You have to understand that the class is open all the time, and students are going to come in there, and you're not going to be able to stick to this idea of, hey, I show up 2 days or 3 days, and I do my bit in there in the class like I would do in a traditional classroom, and then I go on, and do whatever else. It's not acceptable. The students won't accept it. And so one of the things I did when I've mentored and peer reviewed faculty inside institution and outside, where I'm doing peer reviews on just sort of the layout of the class, the functionality, the ability to see the learning objectives and where they're integrated into the assignments, and looking at the feedback. This is hard. There's so much. There's the logistics of physically setting up the online environment, finding resources. Everything is moving rapidly to e-resources, which makes sense, right? I'm online in class. I don't want to have to go wait, 10 days for my physical book to come. And plus I live in, South America, and my university's in the States. It's going to take forever, so we're moving toward that, but that means that's constant work, right? So the faculty member has to be able to assess the resources, assign them, ensure they're up to date, because constantly, you link to something, and now that link's broken because that provider moved that information somewhere else, and the students expect more and more. So like I said a long time ago, if they got a text communication, literally just some words in an email or a messaging system, they were fine. But now everybody expects rich multimedia, so video and audio. I just today, in fact, in my educational work, was working through some of my resources that you have to create, right? You have to create the video, create the audio, which also means, again, you have to learn new software. You've got to understand how to upload that. You've got to understand if somebody has an issue or a technical problem. You also have to understand the different browsers, right? The different ways that student access the software is going to potentially impact the way that the information is received. You also have to understand not just the different browsers, different hardware. Some people use PCs. Some people use Macs. Some people are using Linux or something. You have to understand that, again, way more than you need to in a traditional classroom. None of this would be part of your, traditional classroom teaching. So when we talk about it's easy, is because you have to learn so much more about technology, software, and you have to keep learning it, and the curve keeps getting steeper for what is what surpasses student and administrators and faculty's expectations, right? So it better be multimedia, it better be linked, it better be relevant, it better be timely. And because your students are asking questions all the time, you have to have a totally different protocol for being present in class, for engaging students. I'm one that replicates to the best of my ability the present engagement I have in a traditional classroom where we're all synchronous in the room together, with online. So I'm literally providing, the same type of, lecture material. I'm trying to engage in the same sort of Socratic back and forth in online discussions, which are not synchronous. I'm trying to refresh lines of reasoning that students have, follow up with their points. I'm trying to add supplemental information. I'm trying to also constantly bring in real world events that are happening that day. So you have, again, this sort of myth of, oh, online teaching so great. You just, maybe you're even in your extra spare room in your home and you're not even having to put on a suit. Well, yeah, maybe not, but your classroom's open 24/7 and your students have a much higher expectation of engagement. The other thing is this, if you have a classroom, I've taught in traditional classrooms with hundreds of students in big lecture halls, at big universities, right? Which is standard, not unusual or anything at all. So if I have 200 students in a big lecture hall, it's manageable because I've got teaching assistants, and more than that, I'm not individually talking to all 200 of them all the time. Right. So I'm in there and I'm giving, presentation. I'm engaging students who are, participating in a back and forth. We're doing all of that, but that's not all 200 of them at once. Online, all of them are equally there. And they're all going to have the opportunity to talk. And many times there's a requirement that every single one of them is going to, contribute to a discussion of an academic issue. So instead of it being, one faculty member can sort of reach large groups, in a reasonable way in terms of just how many hours are there in the day. Online, even with small groups, most of my online classes, are somewhere in 20 student, 25 student maybe max. But all of them are participating all the time. So it's an incredible amount of work. You're engaged in each one of them. There's nowhere for them to hide. So one of the things in the program as a student online, that I address is you can't hide. It's much harder online. There's nowhere to hide. You can't blend in. You can't nap in the back of the room. As a faculty member, it's just a lot more work because every single student is engaged all the time, and they all have different needs. Some students are higher touch. They want a lot more engagement. They have a lot more questions. They want to just check with you and make sure they understood something. They need a lot more reassurance. And then you have other students you might not hear from that much other than just their assignments. But again, their assignments are going to be very comprehensive. And the level of feedback that's expected, my expectation of always trying to, set higher and higher standards is it's a lot more work. And so in terms of the quantity of feedback, in terms of the amount of time spent on each individual assignment, in terms of, so much of this is, evaluating what I do. I'm not a math instructor or something like that. I'm evaluating, long written documents. It's a lot more substantive, and I'm not able to do, some Scantron test like I could do in a huge lecture. Where, the people filled in their Scantron and teaching assistant put it in the machine told you, what the grades were. This is all hand graded. And it's a lot of writing because that's what I need. I need them to express themselves in writing. So I would argue, as we move toward the end of this program, that teaching college courses is awesome, but teaching college courses online is not easy. You have to be your own subject matter expert, like you already needed to do, and keep up with research, academic issues, whether it's publishing or editing or being part of conferences and what's happening in your field. In addition to the fact that now you also really need to learn enough software and hardware and be ready to keep upgrading those skills so that you can continue to be able to navigate a new classroom, to build new content, to be able to integrate it with different systems. This is a lot of work. And also the class never closes. So, as I move toward resolution on it, I don't want to be negative, but I have faculty members who weren't successful teaching online that had to be, released from their teaching contracts because they weren't showing up. And that's the thing. Just like a student can't hide in an online classroom, neither can a faculty member. You can't get away with not having incredible presence. You're there, you're posting, you're sharing, you're teaching, you're and if you're not there, everyone can see it, and there's no excuses. And it's a different world. Again, it's new. We're all in this together, learning what's happening. I'm a huge proponent of it as a student and as an educator, but I do understand the differences, and I also understand the people who have not made that transition very well. You need to think about what makes you happy and how you view teaching and how you view, what you feel is, quote, part of your job, and make an assessment whether or not teaching online is for you. Because it's such a radical departure from what traditional classroom teaching is that we sort of are historically used to. It's not for everybody, and rightfully so. So I hope that this was food for thought as you joined me in Educators Eden. As always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information, and thank you again for joining me.